Is it a female?
It is. It is. And his DNA is all over her. She was a mother and grandmother, and she was dumped in a dumpster.
On April 25, 2017, 43-year-old Amy Robertson was found dead in a dumpster in Tulsa, Oklahoma, her body showing signs of brutal violence. Officers had no idea just how complex this case would become as multiple suspects emerged, only to have the investigation circle back to square one. Who could harbor such hatred toward Amy to take her life so savagely? Before we dive in, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our new videos. Amy Robertson was born on August 16, 1973, and spent her whole life in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She worked on and off at a machine parts company, but had several difficult years living on the streets. Amy came from a large family with 13 siblings, 3 sons, and 3 grandchildren. Even though she had little contact with them, no one ever imagined her life would end so tragically, discarded in a restaurant dumpster. On the morning of April 25, 2017, around 9 a.m., dispatchers in Tulsa, Oklahoma, received a frantic 911 call. A woman had arrived at her workplace, Las Americas restaurant, to find a blood pool in the parking lot, leading up to a trash can. Officers from the Tulsa Police Department rushed to the scene, where they discovered a shocking sight. Behind a dumpster lay the lifeless body of a woman, naked and drenched in blood. Her neck was strangled by a t-shirt, and her body was wrapped in a carpet. As they surveyed the crime scene, investigators quickly realized this was no ordinary case. Red stains smeared the ground. Drag marks showed that the victim had been moved across the lot, possibly by the t-shirt around her neck. The gruesome evidence told a painful story. This woman had suffered terribly in her final moments. Upon closer examination, detectives determined that the woman had likely been killed around 8 and 9 p.m. the previous night, April 24th. She had a distinctive tattoo on her back, near her shoulder blades, which might help investigators identify her later. They found further signs of violence and what appeared to be a sexual assault. Moreover, there was a possible connection to another case. Just 2 weeks earlier, a homeless woman had been attacked nearby, and this crime could be a disturbing escalation. The area was known for being a haven for homeless individuals, and directly across the lot there was a house that immediately caught the detectives' attention. It was a place where many of the homeless came and went, and the officers suspected that someone there might have witnessed something related to the crime. They approached the house, a place where many homeless people sought shelter. After speaking to several people who frequented the area, they collected some crucial information. One person described a light-skinned woman named Amy, who resembled the victim, often seen with a man who was about 5'8", around 40 years old, and of Indian descent. This was the first real lead the detectives had received. After spending the next few hours interviewing others in the neighborhood, a clearer picture began to emerge. They could finally confirm that the woman found dead in the dumpster was Amy Robertson, and the man she was often seen with was called Gumercindo Jurado, better known as Monkey. Amy and Monkey were a couple, but they fought frequently. 2 local transients mentioned that they had seen the pair arguing just the night before, and no one had seen her since. The detectives began to wonder if the argument had turned violent. Amy's cause of death was believed to be strangulation, a violent and personal way to kill. It seemed clear that the killer had a deep hatred towards her, making it more likely an act of revenge than a random attack. As a result, Monkey quickly became the prime suspect. His connection to Amy, their volatile relationship, and the fact that he was the last person known to be with her all made him the center of the investigation. A citywide search began. More leads came in from the neighborhood, including a description of Monkey. Detectives scoured the areas he was known to frequent and ran his name through their system. Strangely, nothing was found. No sightings, no hits, no leads. With hope fading, they decided to send his details to local news outlets, hoping that someone might recognize him and come forward. But before the media could even air his information, a patrol officer spotted someone who matched Monkey's description. He immediately called it in. Soon after, Monkey was in custody. Detective ran a quick examination and found no blood trace on him. Detectives sat him down, trying to dig for anything that could tie him to the crime. Monkey said he already knew Amy was dead. Someone had called him after seeing the story on the news. He confirmed that they were a couple, and the last time he saw Amy was around 5 or 6 p.m. the night before her body was found. According to him, they met up briefly and then she said she was going to buy something, maybe drugs, and left. He said she got into a vehicle across the street and disappeared. He thought she would return to the house later, but she wasn't, so he spent the night alone, had a few beers, and went to sleep. No calls, no visitors, nothing unusual. But that also meant he had no alibi. Detectives pressed him about the relationship with Amy and their constant arguments, but Monkey brushed it off.
I gotta ask you this. Did you hurt her today?
No, man.
Did you hurt her yesterday?
No. I never hurt her.
Oh. Did you ever hit her at all?
No, nope. I wouldn't do anything to Amy. She loves me, man. And I tell you one thing, I love her back. I wanted the justice, trust me.
Throughout the interrogation, Monkey denied any involvement in Amy's murder. He said they might have struggled with life, but they loved each other, and insisted he could never hurt her. However, he showed little to no regret at her death. The detectives knew they couldn't just go on his word, so they asked to check his phone and get his DNA. Monkey didn't flinch. He agreed without hesitation. His willingness to cooperate left the room divided. Some detectives started to second-guess their gut. Maybe he really didn't do it. Maybe he was just a guy in shock, grieving in his own way. But others weren't buying it. His calm, collected demeanor could be just a mask. It felt too smooth, too practiced. Nevertheless, Monkey was still their main suspect. As detectives waited for the DNA results to come in, they started digging into Monkey's phone. But what they found immediately turned the case upside down. Monkey had told them the last time he saw Amy was around 5 or 6 p.m. before it got dark. Yet there were photos on his phone taken after 9 p.m. showing Amy in the parking lot near the Shell station. The timeline clearly didn't add up. Monkey was quickly called back in. Calm as ever, he stuck to his story, saying he left the Shell station before nightfall and hadn't seen Amy after that. But when confronted with the photos, he seemed caught off guard. "I don't remember taking those," he said. The tension in the interrogation room grew. Detectives pushed harder. How could he not remember taking pictures of the woman he claimed to love, just hours before she was murdered? Still, Monkey didn't change his story. He denied hurting Amy. He denied everything. Even though it was hard to believe him, detectives had no physical evidence. If he had beaten and strangled Amy, where was the blood? With no confession, they couldn't hold him for murder. But they did find a small window. Monkey had an outstanding misdemeanor warrant for public intoxication. It wasn't much, but it gave them a reason to keep him in custody a little longer. Just when the case seemed stuck, the autopsy report came in. It confirmed the worst. Amy Robertson had been viciously assaulted and strangled to death. Her face had severe contusions and fractures. Whoever did this wanted her to suffer. Now, all eyes turned to the DNA results. They were the last thread holding this case together. If those tests didn't tie Monkey to the crime scene, detectives would have to face the grim possibility that the real killer was still out there. As the tension grew, detectives received a call from the medical examiner with even more disturbing news. Amy had been filled with organic matter, like molds and debris, in both her cavities after death. It looked like someone had intentionally packed it in. Perhaps the killer was trying to hide evidence, to cover up something. But some detectives didn't think so. They believed this was just a sinister act from a twisted mind, a sick sadist. Despite all their efforts, the investigation had been stuck on one lead, Monkey, who still hadn't provided any useful information. The detectives decided to step back and reevaluate, considering other possibilities. One detective pointed out, "It doesn't make sense. They'd been together for 6 months, but this is something else. This is almost a disguise. No, I don't think it's him." That's when another theory surfaced. They recalled a similar assault that had happened just a mile or two from where Amy was found. It also involved a homeless woman and sounded disturbingly familiar. They decided to reclassify this case as a serial crime. and started looking at other similar assaults. They retrieved CCTV footage of the previous attack, and what they saw made their stomachs turn. The video showed a man approaching a woman, asking for directions. After a brief exchange, he suddenly and aggressively grabbed her, dragging her away to another location, and committed his wrongdoing. The woman struggled, fighting him off, but it was no use. This could be the same man who had killed Amy, they thought. Trying to identify him, they searched for the car seen in the footage, but the trail went cold. However, they now suspected they were dealing with a serial predator. Just when it seemed like the case was stalling, a breakthrough came. Authorities had gathered an oral swab from the victim in the previous assault. The DNA was sent for testing, and if it matched the DNA found on Amy, it would confirm their suspect as her killer. However, when the DNA tests came back, it was an unexpected twist. None of the samples, not from Monkey nor from the unknown male in the footage, matched the DNA found on Amy. The detectives were left in disbelief. Both their leads turned out to be dead ends. Now the investigation was back at square one, with no clear suspect in sight. The case was more complicated than ever, and the hunt for Amy's killer was far from over. After 3 months at a standstill, detectives finally received a tip from the Special Victims Unit, which led them to a man named Michael Dixon. The source of the tip was Michael's girlfriend, who had also been assaulted by him. She knew Amy and had shared some unsettling statements Michael had made about her death. According to the girlfriend, Michael had said, "That bitch got what she deserved." These comments immediately raised suspicion. Michael's girlfriend knew Amy, which linked him to the case, and his history of domestic violence against her made the connection even more compelling. The facial injuries his girlfriend had sustained from Michael's assault eerily resembled those found on Amy's body. With this new lead, detectives decided it was time to bring him in for questioning. They began by showing Michael photos of Amy and the crime scene, watching his reaction carefully. Unaware that detectives already knew he was connected to Amy, Michael insisted he had no idea who she was. He even quickly agreed to provide a DNA sample, and appeared surprised when he heard that Amy was dead.
What are you talking about here? What's wrong?
Well, she's dead.
She's dead?
Yeah.
You trying to say I killed her or something, bro?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that she's dead.
Like, how's my base being brought to this girl, bro? I don't understand that.
Dixon seemed defensive, but continued to deny any involvement. The detectives were done playing around and pressed him on the comments he had made about Amy. Cornered, Michael had no choice but to admit that he knew her, though he still insisted he had nothing to do with her murder. He claimed that his words about her were just casual remarks made in passing. Still, his shift in tone, combined with the inconsistencies in his story, raised red flags for the detectives. His initial reluctance to discuss about Amy was telling, and his quick backtrack after being confronted made it clear that something was off. Furthermore, Michael's history of violence, including multiple assaults and troubling behavior, only deepened their suspicions. He had a pattern of anger and aggression, especially towards women, which fit a disturbing profile of someone who might commit such a brutal crime. While he had attempted to distance himself from the allegations, the detectives knew that his connections to Amy were more than just a coincidence. Unfortunately, they didn't have enough evidence to definitively link him to the crime. Faced with this deadlock, they arrested him for domestic assault against his girlfriend, hoping that his DNA test would provide some answers they desperately needed. 3 long weeks later, the results finally came back. To the detectives' shock, they were not a match. Michael Dixon was ruled out as a suspect, and once again, investigators were left empty-handed. Determined not to give up, the detectives continued to collaborate with the Sex Crimes Unit, focusing their efforts on individuals with criminal histories in the area. They kept swabbing people they encountered in the downtown region, hoping to find a match that would lead them to the true perpetrator. Despite their efforts, nothing significant turned up. The months dragged on, and with each passing week, their chances of finding new leads seemed to dwindle. As a full year passed with no progress, the case began to feel like it might slip into cold case territory. The frustration was building, and the pressure was taking its toll. When it seemed like hope was lost, a breakthrough came unexpectedly. An officer from the Special Victims Unit called the detectives with a new lead. They had arrested a man named Dennis Kurtz, a 40-year-old convicted rapist who had recently been paroled. His release dates matched the timeline of Amy's murder, and they thought he might be connected to the case. With Dennis's DNA already on file from a previous conviction, the detectives compared it to the DNA collected from Amy's body. The results were chilling. Dennis's DNA matched the male DNA found on Amy, including traces on both of her legs and the ligature around her neck. It was a stunning confirmation. Dennis Kurtz was the killer. Even though they now knew who the perpetrator was, many questions remained. What was Dennis's connection to Amy, and why did he commit such a horrific crime? To uncover the truth, the detectives went to the prison where Dennis was being held. They showed him several photos of women, including Amy, and asked if he recognized any of them. Dennis flipped through the pictures, his expression cold. He flatly denied any connection to Amy or the other women. Realizing he wouldn't confess easily, the detectives decided to confront him with the strongest evidence they had: the DNA.
Well, your DNA is all over her. Okay.
No, there's no way. There's no way.
Your DNA, man, is definitive. It's
Okay.
There's nobody else on the planet.
I understand the DNA.
So why would it be on her if you didn't kill her?
There's not an explanation. I don't have an explanation for you. I want an attorney.
Okay.
Dennis remained adamant in his denial. The detectives tried to press him further, explaining the consequences of his actions and the devastation Amy's death had caused her family. But Dennis was unmoved. His lack of remorse was almost more disturbing than his silence. Frustrated and with no confession, the detectives had no choice but to leave the interrogation room, knowing they still had a long road ahead to uncover the truth. Digging into his background for any relevant connections, they discovered he was married to a woman named Pamela Kurtz. Hoping she could provide more insight, they reached out to Pamela for an interview. What she revealed during their conversation stunned them. Pamela explained that Dennis had been living with her on and off around the time of the murder, but he was often away for long periods, sometimes for days at a time. She recalled a particular incident that stood out to her.
I believe he was going downtown for a job of some sort. He had a dress shirt on. Later on, I met him and he had a different shirt on. And he said I had to get a different shirt because, the other one had blood on it. And so it wasn't my blood.
Okay.
He said he had found the body in a dumpster and some people saw him. And so, he could be getting into a lot of trouble. I just thought it was just a bunch of smoke that he's blowing. Oh.
It was a horrifying confirmation. Dennis had spun a lie to his wife about discovering a dead body, but it was clear now. He wasn't just a bystander. His involvement was far deeper than anyone had realized. With this new information, the detectives turned their attention back to Dennis. They now understood that he had lied about Amy's murder, but still the motive behind the brutal crime remained unclear. There was no known connection between Amy and Dennis, and there was no evidence that the attack had been premeditated. It became apparent that Dennis was a predatory serial rapist, targeting vulnerable women, and tragically, Amy had become one of his victims on that night. With a stronger understanding of Dennis's dangerous history, detectives presented the case to the district attorney's office. After reviewing the evidence, the DA determined that there was enough probable cause to charge Dennis with first-degree rape and murder. A warrant for his arrest was issued, and the investigation was now fully focused on bringing him to justice. As the trial progressed, more survivors came forward, each one recounting horrifying encounters with Dennis. 6 women testified about their experiences being raped, beaten, and strangled by him, further painting the picture of a man driven by violent tendencies. But the disturbing revelations didn't stop there. It was uncovered that Dennis had once attacked his pregnant girlfriend, strangling her until she lost consciousness. He had also threatened to rip her unborn child from her womb. With each piece of evidence that came to light, Dennis was exposed for the monster he truly was. On November 9, 2021, after a lengthy trial, Dennis Kurtz was found guilty of the rape and murder of Amy Robertson. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never harm anyone again. After a long and agonizing wait, Amy's family finally received the justice they had been hoping for, along with a sense of closure. For those in the homicide unit, this was one of the cases that would forever haunt them. One detective reflected, "Looking at everything we've done and where we are today, I'm glad we got him off the streets. But more than anything, I hope Amy's father finds some peace and justice." Though the pain of her loss would never fully fade, Amy would always be remembered by the people who loved her. What are your thoughts on this case? Why do you think assault cases are rising at such alarming levels? What steps can be taken to prevent these kinds of crimes? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe.